hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Black Man Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Man Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you are dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Man Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Black Man Thinkin.
Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin, here on the dominant force in Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida, Talk Radio, Freedom in AmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Glad to be with you. We have finally reached the fever pitch, or the fever has broken, with respect to Jussie Smollett. I wanted to leave this alone, but there are things that are happening that need to be spoken of in a certain way, in my opinion. And as a result, I had to come back to this. So let's start with the fact that a grand jury listened to all, or heard all, the evidence that was presented by the prosecutor in the case after an extensive investigation into the claims of Jussie Smollett, the actor, the openly gay and black actor on the TV show Empire. His claim that he had been attacked by two white men wearing ski masks who yelled, "This is MAGA country," and poured bleach on him and put a noose around his neck. Well, an arrest has been made, and it's been of Jussie Smollett for lying. Here's how Eddie Johnson, the superintendent of the Chicago Police Department, dealt with the announcement on Thursday, this past Thursday.
This announcement today recognizes that Empire actor Jussie Smollett took advantage of the pain and anger of racism to promote his career. I'm left hanging my head and asking why. Why would anyone, especially an African-American man, use the symbolism of a noose to make false accusations? First, Smollett attempted to gain attention by sending a false letter that relied on racial, homophobic, and political language. When that didn't work, Smollett paid $3,500 to stage this attack and drag Chicago's reputation through the mud in the process. And why? This stunt was orchestrated by Smollett because he was dissatisfied with his salary. Anytime a hate crime is reported in the city of Chicago, it gets the same attention. This didn't get any special attention. You all gave this more attention specifically than we do. We give every hate crime in this city the same amount of vigor because there's no place for hatred in this city. And as I said in the very beginning, I've lived in the city of Chicago my entire life. We just don't have any room for hatred in this city. And for somebody to use it for personal gain, it's shameful, because what that does is take away the resources that we could be putting into other crimes.
It does. It does take away. Now, the Today Show on NBC has been doing a pretty good job of staying on top of this, and here's how they reported the situation regarding the Jussie Smollett arrest.
This morning, Jussie Smollett is out of jail and out of a job, facing a felony charge for lying to police about a hate crime. Fox says the actor of the hit TV drama Empire will not be returning to the show. Its executive producers released a statement saying, "We care about him deeply," but adding, "We have decided to remove the role of Jamal from the final 2 episodes of the season." After posting bail Thursday, Smollett headed to the set of Empire, where he reportedly apologized to the cast and crew and denied any wrongdoing. Police say he staged the hoax, paying $3,500 to brothers Ola and Abel Osundaro to attack him. All of it, police say, an elaborate PR stunt.
Jussie Smollett took advantage of the pain and anger of racism to promote his career.
That career now in free fall, with Fox saying it's considering its options, and TNT yanking the episode of their show Drop the Mic that features Smollett.
We gave him the benefit of the doubt, but when we discovered the actual motive, quite frankly, it pissed everybody off.
Investigators say they relied on 4 dozen surveillance cameras across the city over 3 weeks. The Osundaro brothers caught on camera here buying supplies and later out here on the street are not facing charges. Police said they were complicit, but now are the star witnesses against Smollett. But Smollett's legal team slammed the police investigation, saying the presumption of innocence was trampled on at the expense of their client.
Now, Smollett is still sticking to his story. If he's convicted, he could have to pay restitution, get probation, or he could be locked up for 3 years. Chanel Peter.
That's a wild story. All right, thank you.
He's been written out of the last 2 episodes of Empire for this season, and they're keeping their options open for next season. What is there to keep your options open about? This is called trying to, walk that fine line down the middle. Of course, there's nothing in the middle of the road except painted lines and roadkill. If that's where the producers of Empire choose to be, that's fine. There is also the dropping of or the removal of the episode of Drop the Mic on which he was scheduled to appear. Hollywood does have enough sense, or the entertainment industry does seem to have enough sense to at least put some distance between themselves and Jussie Smollett. Now, you know they want to rehabilitate him as quickly as possible because he's homosexual. He's a black homosexual. He's a black homosexual male. And that is among the few prized people in all of the entertainment industry, at least as far as the liberal press is concerned. And when you break down the reaction to what Jussie Smollett has reportedly done, well, before we do that, let's read the bond proffer that was given regarding what Smollett has done. The defendant, Jussie Smollett, is an actor and singer-songwriter who currently appears as a character on the Fox television show Empire. Defendant Smollett currently resides in an apartment in Chicago's Streeterville neighborhood. The People expect the evidence to show that on Tuesday, January 22nd, defendant Smollett received a written letter at the Cinespace Chicago Film Studios, which is a facility on the southwest side of Chicago where the Empire television show is filmed. The letter contained written threats directed toward defendant Smollett and contained a then unknown white powdery substance. The letter also contained cutout letters pieced together which stated, "Smollett, Jussie, you will die, black F word," and the word MAGA was handwritten on the envelope where the return address is typically located. The powdery substance has since been determined to be crushed ibuprofen tablets. Lord. This powdery substance. The letter also contained a drawing of a stick figure which happens to have a rope around the neck and a gun pointed at it. Law enforcement authorities were contacted and the letter was turned over to the FBI, which is currently conducting forensic analysis of the letter. In January of 2019, and at all times relevant here too, defendant Smollett was close friends with an individual by the name of Abimbola or Abel Osundaro, who is 25 years old. Smollett and Abel initiated their friendship in the fall of 2017. During the course of this friendship, defendants Smollett and Abel socialized together, exercised together, as well as worked together on the Fox television show Empire. Within that working relationship, Abel was a stand-in for a character named Kai, who was a love interest of defendant Smollett's character on the Empire TV show. Additionally, text messages between defendant Smollett and Abel revealed that Abel was a source of designer drugs for defendant Smollett. Specifically, since the spring of 2018, On several occasions, defendant Smollett requested Abel to provide him with Molly, which is a street name for the narcotic ecstasy. Are you picking up on this? Wow. Text messages generated by defendant Smollett to Abel, specifically starting on the morning of January 25, 2019, revealed defendant Smollett asking Abel when he would be leaving on his upcoming trip to Nigeria. This trip was scheduled to take place on the evening of January 29th, and it had been planned by Abel and his brother Olabinjo Ola Osundaro, 27 years old, 2 months prior. After Abel confirmed the date and time of his trip, defendant Smollett texted Abel stating, "Might need your help on the low. You around to meet up and talk face to face." The two then made arrangements to meet at Cinespace Studios that afternoon, where defendant Smollett subsequently drove Abel home to Abel's apartment in the Lakeview neighborhood. During the ride, defendant Smollett indicated to Abel his displeasure with the Empire Studios' handling of the racist and homophobic letter he received 3 days prior. Defendant Smollett then stated he wanted to stage an attack where Abel would appear to batter him. Defendant Smollett also suggested that Abel's older brother Ola assist him with the attack. Defendant Smollett had met Ola on several previous occasions through Abel. Additionally, Ola had also appeared as an extra on the TV show Empire. Abel and Ola are both dark-skinned black males born in the United States with Nigerian descent. When defendant Smollett and Abel reached Abel's apartment at approximately 5 p.m. on January 25th, Ola, who was then living with Abel, was summoned into defendant Smollett's vehicle. Once inside, Smollett asked Ola if he could trust him. When Ola said he could, Smollett detailed his plans of the attack to the brothers. Defendant Smollett stated he wanted them to appear to attack him on the evening of January 28, 2019, near his apartment building in Streeterville. Defendant Smollett also stated that he wanted the brothers to catch his attention by calling him Empire F-word, Empire N-word. Defendant Smollett further detailed that he wanted Abel to attack him but not hurt him too badly and give him a chance to appear to fight back. You remember that interview with Robin, what's-her-name, on ABC, where he said he fought back. Defendant Smollett also included that he wanted Ola to place a rope around his neck, pour gasoline on him, and yell, "This is MAGA country." Prior to the brothers getting out of Smollett's car, Smollett provided Abel with a $100 bill to purchase the rope, gasoline, ski mask, gloves, and red baseball caps, which resemble the ones that say "Make America Great Again." The ride from Cinescope to... Are you picking up on this? The ride from Cinescape Studios to the Osundaro brothers' home and the meeting between Smollett and the brothers is corroborated by CPD, POD videos, and cellular phone tower data of Smollett's phone number. On the late morning of Sunday, January 27th, Smollett drove his vehicle back to the Lakeview neighborhood to pick up the brothers and show them the scene where he wanted the staged attack to take place. Smollett then drove the brothers to the corner of New Street and North Water Street in Chicago where the staged attack was to take place. This was just outside Smollett's apartment building. Further details were provided by Smollett, which included that the staged attack was to take place near the stairs on the southwest corner of New and North Water Streets at 10 p.m. the following night. Smollett also instructed the brothers not to bring their cell phones with them. Smollett directed the brothers' attention, now that's clever, so that they couldn't be tracked. Love it. Smollett directed the brothers' attention toward a surveillance camera on the corner, which he believed would capture the incident. There was a change in the plan that bleach was going to be used rather than gasoline during the simulated attack. Smollett then drove the brothers home and provided them with a $3,500 personal check. That's where the stupid comes in. Made payable to Abel, which was backdated to January 23rd, 2019. On the morning of the 28th, the date of the planned incident, the brothers purchased the clothing items at a local beauty store and the rope at a nearby hardware store using the $100 bill that Smollett had given them. These supplies were corroborated by the surveillance video and a receipt. Oh my goodness. Abel deposited Smollett's check that same day in his own bank account. Oh my, he's so stupid. Later that evening, the plan had changed and the time of the attack had to be pushed back because Smollett's flight into O'Hare Airport from New York had been delayed by 4 hours. Had to have flexibility in your hate crime hoax plans. Smollett's plane eventually landed at 12:30 a.m. on January 29th. At 12:49 a.m., there was a phone call between Smollett and Abel which lasted 3 minutes. During this call, Smollett told Abel the attack would take place at exactly 2 o'clock a.m. at the preset location. Minutes later, Ola ordered an Uber ride share to his home to leave for the crime scene. Cell phone records and Uber records confirmed this call and the Uber ride. Man, these folks are dumb. The brothers then took the Uber to the 1400 block of North Wells where they exited the Uber and flagged down a taxi which took them to within 3 blocks of the arranged scene at approximately 1:22 a.m. The taxi's in-car video captures the brothers flagging the cab and riding in the back seat. So they're there at the... Oh, my. From approximately 1:22 until approximately 2:03 a.m., video evidence showed the brothers on foot in an area bordered by Lakeshore Drive on the east, Columbus Drive on the west, Illinois Street to the north, and the Chicago River to the south. Video evidence also showed that Smollett returned back to his apartment from the airport at approximately 1:30. At 1:45, Smollett left his building to walk to a nearby Subway restaurant at Illinois Street and McClure Court at 2 a.m. And at 2 a.m., the brothers were at the intersection of New Street and North Water Street. However, defendant Smollett did not arrive exactly at the preset time. The brothers then proceeded a quarter block north and waited near a bench until Smollett arrived, which was 4 minutes later. Surveillance cameras captured the brothers waiting at this location just prior to the staged attack. During Smollett's interview on ABC's Good Morning America, which aired on February 14th, he identified the people shown in a still of this surveillance video as his attackers. Also during the interview, Smollett indicated that he was positive that these were his attackers. The 2 men in the video are in fact the Osendaro brothers. It was at this time that the brothers staged the attack on defendant Smollett, just how Smollett had instructed them. While the staged attack was occurring, a witness who was an employee of NBC News Chicago had just parked and exited her vehicle just around the corner from the location of the staged attack. This witness indicated that she heard nothing at the time the staged attack was occurring, despite the fact defendant Smollett told CPD detectives that his attackers were yelling racial and homophobic slurs at him, and he in turn was yelling back at them. So the only person who was there besides the 3 criminals never heard anything. The staged attack lasted 45 seconds, and it was just outside the view of the desired nearby camera that Smollett had pointed out to the brothers approximately 15 hours earlier. He blew it. Approximately 1 minute later, video evidence shows the brothers run from the location southbound toward the Chicago River and westbound toward Columbus Drive. Video evidence also captured the brothers entering a taxi at the Hyatt Regency Hotel across the river at 2:10 a.m. Video evidence then showed at 2:25 a.m. the brothers exit the taxi on the 3600 block of North Marshfield Avenue and walk northbound. This was only a few blocks from the brothers' Lakeview apartment, which was the original Uber pickup location to the staged crime scene. Video shows the brothers walking from where they were dropped off toward their home. 2 minutes after the brothers exited the taxi at 2:27 a.m., defendant Smollett's manager called the police to report the incident. He didn't call him himself? So the manager's in on this? Wow. At approximately 2:42 a.m., Chicago police arrived at Smollett's apartment. Chicago police officers observed that Smollett had a rope draped around his neck. He left the rope on. Interesting. This was captured on police body-worn camera. Seconds later, Smollett asked the police to shut off the cameras. Smollett then made a police report where he claimed he was the victim of an attack in which the offenders struck him while yelling racial and homophobic slurs. Smollett also reported that the offenders placed a rope around his neck, pouring a liquid chemical on him, and told him this is MAGA country. Defendant Smollett also reported for the first time that 3 days prior, on January 26, he received a phone call from an unidentified phone number in which an unidentified male say, "Hey, you little F word," before ending the call. Wow. Smollett also told police that the incident happened near a camera, which he stated should have captured the attack. This is the same camera that defendant Smollett pointed out to the Osundaro brothers in preparation of this staged attack. Smollett also told police that the initial and primary attacker, now known to be Abel Osundaro, was wearing a ski mask which covered his entire face with the exception of his eyes and the area all around his eyes. Smollett stated to the police that he could see the area around this person's eyes was white-skinned. He's lying about everything. As stated earlier in this proffer, the Osundaro brothers are dark-skinned male blacks. During the Good Morning America interview referenced earlier, Smollett stated, "And it feels like if I had said it was a Muslim or a Mexican or someone black, I feel like the doubters would have supported me much more, a lot more." These statements by Smollett further misled the police and the public to believe that his attackers were white. On January 29th at 7:45 p.m., less than 18 hours following the attack, defendant Smollett placed a phone call to Abel, and the duration of the call was 5 seconds. 2 minutes later, Abel called Smollett back, and the call lasted 1:34 seconds. The brothers then boarded their flight to Nigeria and left the country. On January 30th at 10:46 a.m., defendant Smollett called Abel, who was in Istanbul, Turkey, and the duration of that call lasted 8 minutes 48 seconds. For the next 2 weeks, the Chicago Police Department investigated this matter as a hate crime. Chicago police were able to identify the Osundaro brothers as the alleged attackers through camera videos, rideshare records, credit card records, bank records, and a store receipt. Wow. On February 13th, the brothers returned from Nigeria, landing at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, and they were detained by U.S. Customs. Members of the Chicago Police Department then placed them into custody. That same evening, the Chicago police executed a search warrant upon the Osundaro brothers' residence, where they recovered evidence which linked Abel to the Empire TV show. Chicago police already had determined that Ola was affiliated with the show as well. Following their arrest and through consultation with their attorneys, the brothers agreed to cooperate in the investigation. As more evidence such as text messages, phone records, social media records, bank records, surveillance video, and the receipt from the purchase of the rope obtained by investigators, the investigation shifted from a hate crime to a disorderly conduct investigation. The Cook County State's Attorney's Office approved charges of disorderly conduct against defendant Smollett at 6:10 p.m. on February 20th. At 5 o'clock on February 21st, defendant Smollett was placed into custody at Area Central Chicago Police Headquarters. They have bank records, they have video records, they have every piece of evidence you can imagine, and all of it says one thing: that Jussie Smollett lied. And his reason for lying was that he wanted more money. Now, let me tell you how reaction to this is playing out. Let's start with real people, real black people, and others as well. Because you're telling me that a guy who was making $20,000 an episode in 2016, and I understand he was making $100,000 an episode more recently, was so dissatisfied with his pay that he would stage a fake attack in order to make a sympathy bid to get more money. I want to know how many real black people with whom that resonates, that they can feel his pain. Well, I can tell you this: Charles Barkley didn't feel his pain. And what you are about to hear, Charles Barkley went crazy with this on halftime at TNT during an NBA basketball game. And I'm going to tell you, the reaction you're about to hear is probably echoed across the country in barbershops all over Black America.
Jussie, you wasted all that damn time and money. You know what you should have did?
What's that?
Just went up in Liam Neeson's neighborhood. Could have solved all your damn problems. Charles, you got...
Welcome to the American Express Halftime Report. American
Express. There's one over there that's still living that you would say has no chance of happening.
Two black guys beating a black guy up.
And have a black
Speaking out loud.
That's not on here, man. The Clippers will not make the playoffs. And
what kind of hat say that on show?
Maggers hat.
I think that's probably it.
Okay.
The Lakers will not make the playoffs. The Kings will is the latest edition. Go ahead, Kenny. I can't believe you, Chuck.
You pay with cash?
Chuckster.
You pay with cash or you write them a check, Chuck? Never break. Hey, man, America.
How?
America. Let me just tell you something.
What's that?
Do not commit crimes with checks. Come on, man. You cannot. If you're going to break the law, do not write a check.
Because you write the check that what? Behind can't cash.
Yo, man, you can use cash up. Hey, get cash, man. I never used the ATM. Now, I heard you can only get $200 out of
Charles,
stop, literally. You got to make a lot of stuff to the ATM.
I have one more question to ask you. Do you buy the face mask, the rope, and the thing in the same store?
You think they put that on a receipt? Face mask, rope, bleach, on the same store? On the same store?
You wouldn't even go to 3 different stores. Come on, John. I think an NBA rule, if you come out with you can't put a false report of saying someone is hurt and they're not.
What you say, Chuck? No, see. Bogus. I just put up a false report.
Well, you know what?
True words have never been said.
Looks to me like a good time to take a break.
That is a normal black person reaction to this foolishness. Because black people laugh at foolishness, even when the foolishness is done by someone else who, at least in appearance, from an appearance standpoint, would also appear to be black. Matter of fact, we find that even funnier, that we would be that stupid. We find it funny that anybody's that stupid. We find it funnier when someone who claims to be one of us is that stupid. But there's also other reactions. A lot of it is coming from the political arena and from that of white progressives. They are trying to toe the middle of the line. They're trying to say, well, we don't really want to know. Then there's Terrence Howard, people like that who have gone over to the other side. After the arrest, he was called out on social media for his hypocritical support of Jussie Smollett, and he responded, "Sorry you feel that way, but that's the only Jussie that I know." Here's where you pick up on the negrosity. The only Jussie that you know is not the Jussie that there is. The Jussie that is lied. The Jussie that is put out a elaborate plot because he was jealous of how much money you made relative to how much money he made for being on the same show. He thought it was unfair, and he wanted to lie to force Lee Daniels, who famously said, Jussie, you are my son. Okay, your son lied to you in order to get more money. Wow. And then you have this reaction from, bless her heart, Iyanla Van Zant. She was caught on a red carpet. I think this was in L.A. Yes, at a Black Women in Hollywood's award luncheon last week. And she gave this crazy response to the news of Jussie Smollett's arrest.
So how do we make sense of Jussie Smollett? How do we make sense of this situation?
We make sense by saying, wow, look at us. He's one of us. He did, if he did this, at the core, he did what we do every day. He told a lie. That's what he did. Now, we can make up whatever we want to make up about it, but he told a lie the same way the leader of this country does every day. At the core, if he did this, it means that he has an unheard, unspoken, unacknowledged pain, because people in pain seek to get attention. If he did this, it speaks to how we aren't taught to really live in fame and live before the cameras. If he did this, if he did it, I say that we each have to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, if he were to come forward and tell the whole complete truth right now, would we condemn him and persecute him? Would we rather he go through the legal battle and adversarial process for what? Would we let him tell the truth now? That's not about Jussie. That's about us.
You think the world would forgive him?
I would. I already have if he did this, because I've done it. I've lied to get my way in my other life. I've done it. People do it every day. People do it in fear. People do it in pain. They do it in anger. Instead of making this about him because he's on Empire, let's make it about the fragility of who we are as human beings. We are so fragile.
When are you running for office?
Never, ever, ever. I'm a grandma and a great-grandma, and that right there is enough to keep me busy.
If he did it, perhaps she hasn't read the bail and proffer. Maybe she hasn't read that. If he did it, he's experiencing some sort of pain. You know, his pain is that he wanted more money. He was already making 5 figures or 6 figures per episode for this TV show, and that wasn't enough. His pain was he was envying somebody else's money. He was counting somebody else's money, thinking it should be his. That's his pain. And Iyanla Vanzant's response there is exactly why her and Terrence Howard are exactly why I despise left-leaning black people. You're going to let this clown take everybody down and try to say, well, he's us. No, he's not. No, I'm not a liar. That doesn't mean I've never told a lie. Doesn't mean I'll never tell another lie. I don't go out of my way to lie. I don't concoct a plan which is based upon a lie. I am not homosexual. Don't say he's me. I'm not a black homosexual. And I'm not someone who is so envious of somebody else's money that I would try to scheme someone into giving me more money just because I'm unhappy. No, he's not one of us. Now, he is Iyanla, he's one of you. He is Terrence, he is one of you. But you guys aren't really black except in skin tone. You are binos, black in name only. But that's the state. I have one social media friend who said something that I just find ridiculous. I won't give her name, but she's a black female, and this seems to be not an uncommon sentiment among black females, particularly those who are left-leaning. Y'all, I truly hope this Jussie Smollett thing is not a hoax, but I truly just don't know what to think. No. You don't want to accept the truth. You don't want to face the facts. They went after this thing, CPD went after this thing like a hate crime, and through the process of investigation, they found out that he was playing everybody. And now when they put it down in black and white, and they take it through the process, even to a grand jury, you still don't know what to think? No. You don't want to think anything other than what your ideology says must be the case. Truth be darned. And that's where we are with Jussie. The blacks who are getting the most airtime, who are getting the most attention, particularly in the media, sound like Iyanla Vanzant and Terrence Howard and Lee Daniels and all these sympathetic folks. But you do know Lee Daniels agreed to get him off the show for at least the last 2 episodes. That's what they sound like. And that's the picture, the portrait they want to put out about black people to everybody. And don't try to get, well, you know, it's not. No. If you're not going to condemn black people that do wrong, you're saying it's okay for all black people to do wrong, and it's not a big deal when black people do wrong. He is to be condemned. I have no problem condemning him. But if you do, after all the evidence that has been found, after weeks of investigation, and the mountain of data supporting the fact that he has been charged with a felony, if you still have problems understanding who and what Jussie Smollett is, then that problem is indeed yours. And you're part of the problem that the nation has. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force of internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. Freedom in AmericaRadio.com and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Final segment of this first hour. I'm done with the left-leaning black political class. I'm done with left-leaning black punditry. I give up on them. They are worthless. They are of no redeeming social value. Booker T. Washington wrote about such people more than a century ago, declaring that there are folks who are out there whose job it is, and this is their job, this is how they put forward their livelihood or derive their livelihood, by representing victimization at all costs of blacks to white people. We have to basically keep these victim things in front of them. We have to make them feel guilty. Why? Does it help black people? No. But it keeps Jesse Jackson, it keeps Al Sharpton, it keeps every other left-leaning political pundit, and also it keeps them paid, and it keeps left-leaning black politicians in office. They're doing nothing for black people. The same people that they're crying about how they're being victimized continue to be victimized, and even more so under their ideology, by their ideology. When they're in political office, by their leadership. The Jussie Smollett incident has exposed them in a way, and they're scrambling. For example, you had Cory Booker and Kamala Harris. The two ain't got a hope in heck of getting the nomination. They will not sniff the Democrat nomination for president. And they jumped out there calling what happened to Jussie Smollett a modern-day lynching. And Kamala Harris is choking back, trying to walk. She can't walk it back. She didn't know how to walk it back. Cory Booker, well, the thing is about Cory Booker never says anything that matters. But you do have people who are professional pundits. Now, see, Harris and Booker are safe. They're Democrats from deep blue states, and nobody really gives a rat's behind what senators do. Just look pretty for the camera, and don't embarrass yourself too badly, and don't embarrass your constituents, and you'll be all right. So they'll just stay in the Senate more than likely. But the punditry is terrible. They are now trying to find a way to spin what Jussie did. I played in the last segment Iyanla Van Zandt, Oprah's life fixer coach type of person. And she basically said, well, Jussie's all of us. We all lie. No, we don't all tell felony lies. We don't. We don't all go out and pay cash to people to fake an attack. No, we don't. At the end of it all, no, he didn't just tell a lie. He perpetrated a hoax, complete with checks. Tiffany Cross went on CNN last Friday and tried to put the whole thing with Jussie on people who weren't in any way, shape, or form involved.
I think this is, if he did do these things, it's definitely, sociopathic behavior. If he created this attack, I don't know that he is representative of some large group of society. I think we have to be honest about what the MAGA hat has come to represent, what the MAGA symbol has come to represent. I don't know that I would conflate these two. This is an actor who was, allegedly feigning this whole attack, trying to get more money for his salary. That's a separate conversation from what's happening in society at large, and the divide that's happening in this country with, as John said, hate crimes being on the rise. They rose 30%. Again, recently 7% in 2018 alone, and most of these groups are white supremacist groups, as evidenced by a member of the United States government who amassed a huge amount of weapons.
There's all sorts of stats. But if this is true, didn't Jussie conflate the two? I mean, if the story is true, didn't he bring the intersection together and force people to have this conversation? And if it is true, didn't he, in fact, attempt to paint the MAGA supporters as these racist and homophobic people? I think
I have to disagree with you there.
If the story is true,
but Michelle, I have to respectfully disagree. I think MAGA supporters have painted themselves as that. I mean, when you look at footage, when you hear things they say, this is the honest to goodness truth, and we have to be bold enough to call that out.
Why? That is just the extreme at the rally.
I'm sorry?
The extremes at the rally. I mean, you, I think, are using a broad brush stroke as well, but the extremes at the rally have been violent, not most of the thousands there.
Yeah, well, the fact that most of thousands of people aren't shouting, ridiculous, hateful, racist rhetoric, but it still you have aligned yourself with a group of people who does. And if we want to pretend that, the MAGA symbol hasn't come to represent that, I just think that's false. And I think...
Can I say one thing? We need to make crystal clear, though, if the Chicago police are right, no one in a MAGA hat did this.
I agree, yeah.
Jussie Smollett made this up. It's on him. This is on him. If the police are right here,
let's get rid of all the ifs with regard to Smollett. He lied. He did it. He's going, I don't know if he's going down, because this is still a very liberal environment. But notice what you heard here. It's about the MAGA hat. No, it's not. Nobody had a MAGA. He made it up. Nobody with a MAGA hat was there. Well, you're aligned with these people. Excuse me. The majority of the American people of any ethnicity are not aligned with white supremacists, including the vast majority of white people, including the vast majority and even vaster majority of those who vote for Trump. They're not white supremacists. They never have been white supremacists. And the problem for those who are on the left and black and running their mouths is they don't know how to respond in an environment where white people are no longer or afraid or less afraid to speak their minds and not be concerned about what a black person calls them. And you see how they're turning this over? Tiffany Cross was over there talking about, well, and what about the guy in the government who amassed weapons? Yeah. One other thing about that, if you see the video, there's another person in there who you'd never know was there by listening to the audio, and that was Van Jones. See, this is what happens, and this is one of the reasons why I despise political left-leaning black females. Because you had two black females arguing. I don't know how far left the other one was, but Tiffany Cross is obviously far left. Van Jones, who is no wallflower, couldn't even get a word in edgewise. Could not get a word in edgewise during this discussion. And he's as bad as they come. But the left-leaning black female will push her lies to the point where no one else can be heard. A great example of that is Angela Rye. Angela Rye is a shrill banshee who talks over everyone, shouts, because she is not about to allow any other opinion to be heard. This is what we're dealing with here. Another one who came up with this foolishness was Michael Steele, the former chairman of the Republican National Committee. Well, he's not left-leaning. Oh, bogus. You don't spend your time on MSNBC sucking down that cash and you don't lean left. Michael Steele is one of the primary reasons that the Republican Party didn't take control of the Senate in 2010. He sucked as a National Committee chairman. He was pitiful. He's pathetic. And he's on board with this bash Trump over the Coast Guard nonsense.
So interesting and raises more of the questions that you're asking. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I guess I kind of, at this point, have reached, my glass is no longer half full. It's just overflowing with all the crazy that comes out of Trump. And on this one, why would we be surprised that a self-proclaimed nationalist would not speak out against a self-proclaimed white nationalist? Why are we acting like this is a space that Donald Trump is going to go in on behalf of the American ideal? No, he's not. And these are his people. All right. And he's not going to thank law enforcement because he's probably not happy about what law enforcement did.
Is that where we are?
That's where we are. I mean, I call the space where we are. I mean, I'm just not going to try to dress it up and be all, pie in the sky and hopeful that, maybe in the next incident, Donald Trump will actually get it right, that he will have matured in his presidency enough to act like a president.
But that's a brave thing to say. Let me just draw you out on that. If he'd carried out his attacks, what do you think the president would have done?
Well, that's the next test in all of this. That's a very good question, and it's absolutely the next test, because we can sit here and honestly say we would hope that there would be the appropriate level of outrage and pushback and all hands on deck, to your point about the Justice Department and those responding. But here we sit and we have a little question mark over, the little thought bubble is a question mark. I don't know what he would do. And that's the sad spot about all of this. And you have communities of color, you have communities across this country that are concerned about whether or not this president is interested in protecting their interests.
Let me I can't let this go because you're blowing my mind. So you think if Dylan Roof committed that crime now, I mean, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
No Amazing Grace?
Show me otherwise. Prove it to me otherwise. All right? Prove it to me otherwise, because I can only go on what you say, what you do, and what you don't do, right?
All right, let me come to you, but let me show you, I want your thoughts on this, and let's watch one of the presidents.
So let me get this straight. The fact that the Trump administration arrested the guy before he could do damage, you think that means Trump is unhappy with the fact he's arrested. You believe that Trump wanted him to do damage. Michael Steele, you are a buffoon. You're a loser and a buffoon. You're pathetic. That's non-thinking. And you've sold yourself out to the victimization crowd. Blacks are doing well under Donald Trump. Better than they ever did under Barack Obama, who you probably voted for twice. But you have to understand, this is not a recent phenomenon. You can go back quite a ways and find this type of lunacy maybe expressed better back in the day from political blacks, activist blacks, all the way back into the last century. Ella Baker was considered a civil rights leader back in the 70s. And she showed up in 1974 at a solidarity rally in Puerto Rico and had these comments.
Friends, brothers, and sisters in the struggle for human dignity and freedom, I am here to represent the struggle that has gone on for 300 or more years, a struggle to be recognized as citizens in a country in which we were born. I have had about 40 or 50 years of struggle, ever since a little boy on the streets of Norfolk called me a nigger. I struck him back, and then I had to learn that hitting back with my fist one individual was not enough. It takes organization. It takes dedication. It takes the willingness to stand by and do what has to be done when it has to be done. A nice gathering like today is not enough. You have to go back and reach out to your neighbors who don't speak to you. And you have to reach out to your friends who think they are making it good and get them to understand that they, as well as you and I, cannot be free in America or anywhere else where there is capitalism and imperialism until we can get people to recognize that they themselves have to make the struggle and have to make the fight for freedom every day in the year, every year, until they win it. Thank you.
That is abhorrent. That is a black woman standing up saying that that she is against capitalism and imperialism. Let me say this about capitalism. If you don't like capitalism, then you are a socialist or a communist. That has never worked. If you have a problem with imperialism, maybe you need to define what it is. Because people do have a natural tendency to want to expand their influence and their scope. You want them not to do that? I get it. But what is it that you would have them do? I'm not in favor of the negative side of imperialism. I'm not into the enslavement of other peoples and this, that, and the other. But the truth of the matter is, that's human history. That's the way human beings work. That's the way they think. Trying to deny that is not going to get you anywhere. I will give you, if you listen to her comments, she was trying to walk it back a little bit, saying, I'm not really as radical as you guys think you are. But the problem is you said what you said. You've been against the things that have helped black people. Capitalism helps black people. And you're not in favor of America because you don't like how America has treated you. Even though you were better treated in 1974 in America than you were anywhere else on the globe as a black person. This is a problem. And I don't have any more patience for left-leaning blacks, particularly not left-leaning black females. They are a cancer. They will make sure that black people never, ever do well in American society. They will reserve a remnant to always be stuck in ghettos, to be stuck in poverty, to be stuck in government dependence, and they will make their money by continuing to represent their plight. I'm going to turn this over to my good friend Ron Edwards, and after that we'll be back with Hour 2 of Black Man Thinking.
If a group of people are in a boat and one of them pulls out a gun and tries to shoot a hole in the bottom, the others would try to stop her to avoid a catastrophe. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, if you look at the United States of America, like the lady trying to shoot a hole in the bottom of the boat and bring harm to the passengers, most Democrats, educators, crooked ministers, rhino Republicans, and nasty illegal border crossers are together working to literally sink the United States into a sea of oblivion. Democrats are already circling their dirty wagons and hope to shoot down President Trump's efforts to wrestle our republic away from the grip of slimy swamp dwellers who hope to sink our exceptional constitutional republic in a sea of victimhood obsession. No border protection, race or identity politics, socialism, unrestricted abortions, and all other evils. Our great America is under attack from numerous enemies from within, who, like Khrushchev said many years ago, are trying to bury her. Thus, the time is now for we the people to join forces and prevent our constitutional republic from being completely turned into a socialist regime. I'm Ron Edwards. Join me Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific on AmericaMatters.us, SHR Media, and Spreaker.
Ron Edwards, the new voice of America.
Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
I have a dream. One day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal.
Black Man Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Man Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it's made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Man Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Black Man Thinkin.
Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin, here on the dominant force in Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. There's really nothing new in the Green New Deal. I just want to make sure I say that at the start. Now, if you're unsure of what the Green New Deal is, well, the Washington Post put out a video back in December of 2018 to try to give you a little bit of perspective on what should be coming your way thanks or courtesy of the Democrat Party.
As a young person, I have come to know a world where climate change is not just a theory to accept or deny, but it is a global threat that we are already seeing the effects of.
It's called the Green New Deal, a platform pushed by some Democrats designed to tackle climate change while stimulating the economy. So, what exactly is it? The term Green New Deal, a throwback to President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal reforms and infrastructure programs, has been around for years. One of the earliest mentions was in 2007, in a column by the New York Times' Thomas Friedman. By 2008, the concept continued to evolve when then Green Job czar Van Jones used the phrase to describe a plan to increase medium-skilled jobs in green sectors. The latest iteration, the one being championed most notably by Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is the one making waves.
Because we don't have a choice. We do not have a choice. We have to get to 100% renewable energy in 10 years. There is no other option.
Some of its aims include transitioning the country away from fossil fuels, decreasing the use of carbon in agriculture, transportation, and infrastructure, and aiming to make the economy carbon-free within 10 years. It also seeks to tackle income inequality through a federal jobs guarantee program that assures a, quote, living wage. Many other high-profile progressives, from freshman lawmakers like Rashida Tlaib and Pramila Jayapal to more establishment figures like John Lewis, have shown support. And activists like the Sunrise Movement and Justice Democrats have staged protests and sit-ins on Capitol Hill. Despite support for the creation of a select committee in Congress, Senate Republicans have openly criticized the effort, calling the measure expensive and, quote, impossible to afford. And despite having the majority in the House, Democrats have also pushed for climate-based reforms before, like in 2010, and lost.
Let's make sure we understand some things here. The Green New Deal harkens back to FDR's New Deal of the 1930s following the Depression or the stock market crash in 1929. Have you forgotten that the New Deal failed? After 8 years of New Deal, the United States still had double-digit unemployment. Double-digit unemployment. As a matter of fact, the only large country that actually seemed to have gone through the Great Depression was the United States. Germany, who was saddled with reparations payments after World War I, which were crippling, were able to recover their economy enough to start another world war. And no one else was looking at the same economic catastrophe that was still playing out in the United States after 8 years of the New Deal. FDR's programs also gave us Social Security, which has more unfunded liability than the federal government has debt. Now, cue two people who have no sense of history. And I'm just going to put it out there. They have no sense of history. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has shown that she is either a useful idiot or an absolute fool. There's no other thing to call her. Now, she's idealistic, perhaps. She's ambitious, certainly. But she's clueless. She knows nothing about the impacts of what she's doing. Her whole thing is to tell people that, look what's going to happen to us if you don't do what I want you to do. And she teamed up with another useless progressive from Massachusetts, the now senior Senator Markey. How many of you even knew that there was a Senator Markey from Massachusetts? But here they are on February 7th announcing their Green New Deal.
Today is the day that we truly embark on a comprehensive agenda of economic, social, and racial justice in the United States of America. That's what this agenda is all about. Because climate change and our environmental challenges are one of the biggest existential threats to our way of life. Not just as a nation, but as a world. And in order for us to combat that threat, we must be as ambitious and innovative in our solution as possible.
I say today that it is time for us to be bold once again. We have the technology to do it. We have the moral obligation. We have the economic imperative. We just need the political will to get this done. The sun is setting on the dirty energy of the past. Today marks the dawn of a new era of climate action.
Explain to me what the Green New Deal has to do with race or racial challenges. That one's a hard one. And let's make sure we understand exactly what they're calling for in the New Deal, the Green New Deal. The Federalist put out a finding on that back in February, or this is still February, and called out some of the claims or some of the demands that are being sought by the Green New Deal. It calls for the elimination of all fossil fuel energy production. All of it. Now, of course, they can't affect this anywhere else but the United States, even though Miss Ocasio-Cortez has world ambitions. But if you think China's going to give it up or India's going to give it up, you're sadly mistaken. Eliminate nuclear energy. The Green New Deal also calls for eliminating all nuclear power. Eliminate 99% of cars. They want to also retrofit every building in America with state-of-the-art energy efficiency. Every building in America, really? Eliminate air travel. Calls for building out high-speed rail at a scale where air travel stops becoming necessary. So how do you get to Hawaii? We're going to guarantee that every single American will have a job that includes a family-sustaining wage, family and medical leave, vacations, and a pension. You're going to guarantee that. Free education for life, free college or trade schools for every American. It promises the government will provide healthy food to make every American healthy. We're going to give everybody food. Are you serious? A house. The government will provide safe, affordable, adequate housing for every American citizen. The Green New Deal aims to provide economic security for all who are unable or unwilling to work. Excuse me? Unwilling to work. Also, they're going to ban meat. You can't get to zero emissions in 10 years because they're not sure if they're going to be able to get rid of flatulent cows and aircraft that fast. The only way to get rid of the cow issue is to get rid of beef. I guess we're going to kill all the cows and then we won't have any cows to eat. Please explain to me what that has to do with racial equality or race relations. Banning meat. You're going to get some brothers real upset when you tell them they can't have them ribs. You're going to give people... This is ridiculous. The same day Nancy Pelosi was asked about it, and her response during a press conference was classic Pelosi.
To follow up, is the Green New Deal proposal a useful basis?
I haven't, quite frankly, I haven't seen it, but I do know that it's enthusiastic, and we welcome all the enthusiasms that are out there. And lots of friends to see, so my apologies for running late right past that time. So time is of the essence. We welcome the enthusiasm that is there. The Green New Deal points out the fact that the public is much more aware of the challenge that we face, and that is a good thing because the public sentiment will help us pass the most bold common denominator, bold initiatives with the interest in, again, saving the planet while we create jobs, protect the health of our children, and pass the planet on in a very serious way. I'm very excited about it all, and I welcome the Green New Deal and any other proposals that people have out there.
I haven't read it. I don't know what's in it, but we are looking to have the enthusiasm so that we can pass these initiatives. What does that sound like? We have to pass the bill before we can find out what's in it. We've been here before with this speaker. I didn't know that anybody was in a hurry to go back there. But this is how she operates, so you can't really be surprised. Now, as far as paying for all this, by now you've probably seen different takes of Ocasio-Cortez struggling on television before CNN or Fox or anybody when asked the question, where's the money going to come from for this? And she basically dodges the answers, not expertly in any way, shape, or form, but she just happens to dodge them. Well, Fox News Insider went and did a man on the street type of thing back in July of last year. I would say this was after she had won the Democrat primary to replace Joe Crowley, who's really gone, not because she is a better candidate. I would say there was probably voter fraud in that election as well. But Joe Crowley wouldn't have pushed this type of agenda. Nowhere near the way that Ms. Ocasio-Cortez is doing. But they went and asked people out in the street, and it looks like from the video I could see, it looked like it was in New York, how is this going to get paid for? First of all, is it a good idea? And if you think it's a good idea, well, how are we going to pay for it? And here was the answer.
Her platform includes free health care, college tuition, the minimum living wage, housing as a human right. Are those things that you think the government should be providing for people?
Absolutely.
Yes, it is. 100%.
I feel like everyone should have free education and health care.
How are we going to pay for this?
Oh, God. I mean...
Us,
I guess.
Yeah. Who, in your mind, should pay for all of the free things?
All of the free things? Well, some of it should come from taxes, but the government should pay for it.
But the government is funded by taxes.
Yeah.
Well, the money's got to come from somewhere. Well, Democratic socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez claims that most things in life should be free, but it seems that many supporters don't know how she's going to end up paying for it.
Canvas Reform's Kevin Phillips is here with more on his latest videos. Kevin, I love that you were sort of explaining how things work to some of these youngsters.
They definitely need plenty of help in understanding that the government cannot, in fact, fund every single thing you want for free. Even though your feelings might be hurt by that, it's important to understand that fact. And it's tempting to laugh around about the rise of socialism, but ultimately it's not a joking matter. This is a serious issue. Millennials, who are the most likely to fall for it, are now the largest voting bloc in America. They had some other ideas on how we're going to come up with the $1 trillion or so it's going to take to fund all these free things. I believe we have a clip of that here.
I don't know where the money would come from, but we can figure it out.
Okay. More taxes on the rich people.
Yeah, for sure, man. They can afford it.
Tax corporations and tax the 1% and find a way to support a living wage.
The people with a good idea and a good reason to spend their tax money wouldn't mind actually paying more taxes.
Okay. Yeah. And not to mention, she talked about gutting the military. I mean, ultimately, it's like we got to slash our military to pay for all this.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems like all the students don't have a grip on history, and it's because they don't. They're not being taught history and economics courses we covered at the Leadership Institute's campus reform. Universities no longer making civics and government and economics courses mandatory, replacing them with these social justice initiatives. And so many students, it's hard to blame them. They don't have a context of history. They don't know that socialism has failed every time it's been implemented. They think, well, it's tolerant. It's open-minded to want to help people with free things. They don't understand that the best way to bring people out of poverty or to give them freedom of opportunity and give them equal opportunity, free markets, and actually, I think context there is helpful for that.
That's a great point, Kevin. Maybe we should send some of these youngsters on a field trip to Venezuela to see what the end result of socialism
They're going to want to
is.
come back pretty quickly.
They are, and I'm sure that their ideology will fall apart quite quickly. And I think a lot of this also stems from how we have demonized success in America.
Of course.
Many people are taught that if you are wealthy, you only got that way because you stole it from someone less fortunate or less privileged. And I think after 8 years of class warfare under President Obama, young people are now coming of age thinking, well, if someone else is rich, it must be because they did something wrong.
Yeah,
and so instead of teaching people to emulate success, we've taught them now to try and drag successful people down, and that's the wrong way of doing things.
Great point.
Always good to have you on. Great work out there.
Of course.
Thanks, Kevin.
So those who support Ms. Ocasio-Cortez have no clue how this is going to be paid for. They just like it, and they expect the money to simply materialize. Doesn't work that way, but that's what they expect. Well, J.W. Mason, an economist, came to the rescue on the 24th of February on Now This. This economist gave an explanation of sorts regarding how the Green New Deal would be funded.
Climate science is telling us that we're on track for over 3 degrees Celsius of warming this century. That means millions of deaths. It means billions of people at risk of losing their home to floods and deserts. It will mean refugee crises that dwarf what we're seeing today, and in the future, potentially, an uninhabitable planet. This is not something you can put a price on. The Green New Deal is essential to avoid climate catastrophe. It would be worth giving up a lot for that. But here's the thing. For most of us, the Green New Deal will leave us better off economically than we are today. Right now, millions of working-age people are unemployed in this country. Many millions more are underemployed. The labor force participation rate is 3 points lower than it was a decade ago. That represents an enormous amount of productive labor that is currently going to waste. Productivity growth is also still very slow, and in large part that is also due to weak demand. Someone needs to spend money to put people to work, to give businesses a reason to boost investment and raise productivity. Consumers won't spend money if their incomes are low. Businesses won't invest if there's no one to sell to. That's where government needs to step in. Investing in our economy when no one else can, putting millions of Americans back to work, and raising living standards in the process. That's why we shouldn't think of the Green New Deal as an economic cost. It's actually the solution to our biggest economic problem. But can we pay for it? Easily. The Green New Deal will be funded the same way we paid for the original New Deal, the same way we paid for World War II. Congress will authorize the expenditures, and the Treasury will spend the money. Now, over time, that spending will be financed by some mix of borrowing and higher taxes, especially on the rich. Whether or not we need to raise taxes on the rich to pay for the Green Deal is honestly a bit beside the point. Taxing away extreme concentrations of income and wealth is good for our democracy. As for debt, it's strange to be worrying about that when interest rates are still extremely low by historical standards. If anyone is worried about federal debt, it clearly is not the bond markets. They seem to be saying, please, borrow more. The limit on what we can spend isn't financing, it's the real resources of our economy. And when we see inflation that the Fed can't get up to its target, when we see huge numbers of prime-age people still out of work in a supposedly strong labor market, when we see businesses enjoying record profits but still slow to find anything to invest in, when we see wage growth barely budging, then it is very clear that we are far from any real limits to our productive capacity. A Green New Deal doesn't mean cutting back on other material needs. It means mobilizing the vast, unused capacity of our economy that is currently going to waste.
That was some of the best fast-talking gobbledygook that you can imagine. Let's kind of take this apart. Global warming is a big problem. They think that the planet's going to warm up by 3 degrees Celsius in the next decade. Wow, NASA doesn't think so. February 6th, this is in the American Thinker. NASA, extreme low sunspot counts indicate global cooling onset. Global cooling. The temperature is going down. As the Earth, from the article, as the Earth was completing solar cycle 24, sunspot counts and magnetic activity were expected to cyclically fall from a high of over 100 in 2014 to a low of 0 in 2022. But the sunspot count plunged to 0 in mid-2018 and has stayed there, remains substantially lower than forecast for the next solar cycle. The data could indicate onset of a supercycle Maunder minimum. The last Maunder minimum period from 1645 to 1715 was a period referred to as the Little Ice Age. Science, which progressives love to tout, is saying that global warming is not happening. Global cooling is happening. I'm sorry. That's just, we're supposed to be all in for science. Well, science is saying we're more likely to see another small ice age than we are to see the globe continue to warm. And that's interesting because now a lot of people don't particularly care for Glenn Beck, but he and his team on the Blaze came up with a report. They found a report back in July of 2017 that was actually interesting about the so-called science of global warming.
It's a peer-reviewed, and I love how they emphasize this is a peer-reviewed study, because that's what you always hear from the global warmists. It says almost all of the supposed warming is coming from scientists adjusting the temperatures. And we've talked about before how they go back and they adjust temperatures. Now, why are you adjusting temperatures from the 1940s? Right. How do you know today in 2017 what the temperature was on July 10th in 1943? You don't. You don't. They probably knew then, but you don't know now.
Okay. Yeah,
you don't know now.
And this is one of the things that, because I've never seen it compiled like this before. There have been, skeptics have pointed this idea out before, that what they do is not necessarily adjust the current temperatures higher to get more warming.
Although they have done some of this, according to this study, they have done that too.
One of the things is they go back and they make the old temperatures colder.
Right.
So it looks like it's warmed more from back then to today. Now they show...
Of course, the 30s and 40s were hot. They were really warm periods, warm decades. And so now we're making them cooler. They're not as hot as they once were.
And the important thing here is the rate of the warming, because the rate of the warming is something that they can, it's not even how much it's warmed, it's what is the rate, so how much per decade. So they can extrapolate that to make global warming look intensely horrible if the rate is fast. If the rate is slow, it's not as big of a deal. And when they're talking about hundreds and in some cases thousands of years, it makes a big difference. But you look at the difference between the 1980 chart of temperatures and the 2015 chart of temperatures. They reproduce every single chart all against each other, and you're talking, almost all the warming is because of this,
because of the adjustments.
Holy cow!
What he's trying to say, and didn't necessarily come through that well in that clip, was that if you want to see the scientific evidence for global warming, it is not because the temperatures are changing, it's because the records are being changed. Not current records, they're going back in the past and lowering temperatures so that when you look at the trend, today looks like a much more pronounced increase. The name of the report that they are talking about, it is called On the Validity of NOAA, NOAA, NASA and Hadley CRU Global Average Surface Temperature Data, and the Validity of EPA's CO2 Endangerment Finding. Came out in June 2017, written by Dr. James P. Wallace, Dr. Joseph S. DeLeo, and Dr. Craig D. Itso. And it's peer-reviewed, as they said, with people from the EPA, with people from NASA, from Michigan State. It's University of Colorado, University of Missouri, MIT. Wow. Here's coming from the abstract. In this research report, the most important surface data adjustment issues are identified, and past changes in previously reported historical data are quantified. It was found that in each new version of the global average surface temperature data has nearly always exhibited a steeper warming linear trend over its entire history, and it was nearly always accomplished by systematically removing the previously existing cyclical temperature data pattern. This was true for all three entities providing GAST data: NOAA, NASU, and Hadley CRU. As a result, the research sought to validate the current estimates of the GAST using the best available relevant data. This included the best documented and understood data sets from the U.S. and elsewhere, as well as global data from satellites that provide far more extensive global coverage and are not contaminated by bad sitting and urbanizing impacts. The conclusive findings of this research are that the three gas, which is global, global average surface temperature data sets, are not a valid representation of reality. What the science climate folks who are claiming global warming are saying, it's not based on reality. In fact, the magnitude of their historical data adjustments that remove their cyclical temperature patterns are totally inconsistent with published and credible U.S. and other temperature data. They're lying. So guess what? Green New Deal is based on a lie. It is based on two lies. First, the lies of the scientific data, and the lies of history, where they try to state that the New Deal actually worked. It did not. So I have two things. I have a lie and a failure, and they want the American people to go for this. Why? Because they want you to be slaves. They want you to give up everything and let them run your lives. They want you to be pets. They want you to be zoo animals. They want you, that's the best way to describe it. They want to turn the entire world into a progressive zoo. Because that's exactly what they're saying. You'll have your own house. You'll have your own food. All of it's provided for you. You don't have to do nothing. If you don't want to work, or if you're not able to work, you're still going to have money. What's the difference between that and being in a flipping zoo? There isn't any. And if you don't want to be part of the zoo population, they will take every bit of money that you can possibly produce and leave you working like something, living like what's worse, like worse than a zoo critter, so that you would want to be included in the population. That's what this is about. And all the good sounding stuff that they want to say, don't you want this free stuff? There is no such thing as free. And if you still have people in America in this day and age who have forgotten or never told that, then you don't need to let them vote. And you definitely don't need to let them make any decisions of merit. They shouldn't even be, somebody needs to be breathing for them. The Green New Deal is nonsense. And it is a simple ploy to end America and to give us over to global control and other people who simply do not like us and want to see this last best hope for government of, by, and for the people to perish. My suggestion is you don't let it happen. Stanley, Levy, Black Man Thinkin'. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us, also WDEQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Final segment of the show. Venezuela. To follow on with the discussion of the Green New Deal, you really need to look at Venezuela, because when you have people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who calls herself a democratic socialist, along the lines of Bernie Sanders, who is a self-described socialist. He calls himself a democratic socialist as well. You have to remember what socialism does. Donald Trump actually touched on socialism in a place that is being devastated by it, Venezuela, when he talked to the UN in 2017.
We call for the full restoration of democracy and political freedoms in Venezuela. The problem in Venezuela is not that socialism has been poorly implemented, but that socialism has been faithfully implemented. From the Soviet Union to Cuba to Venezuela, wherever true socialism or communism has been adopted, it has delivered anguish and devastation and failure. Those who preach the tenets of these discredited ideologies only contribute to the continued suffering of the people who live under these cruel systems.
Faithful implementation of socialism is what has done in Venezuela. You'll notice that this is the UN. The UN is about as leftist an organization, and anti-American, to be honest with you, as exists anywhere on the planet. Yet when Donald Trump called out Venezuela for socialism and its devastation to its country and its people, there was actually applause in the UN General Assembly. That ought to tell you something. Now, if you want to get an idea of how socialism took down Venezuela, I found a little clip from an organization called Freedom Tunes, and they just do animated explanations. Of course, you can't see the animation on radio, but this is how they explained what socialism had done to Venezuela.
Venezuela. No one wants to take responsibility for it. We've heard time and time again that it's not fair to judge socialism based on the performance of Venezuela's economy, or the economy of any other socialist state for that matter. And whenever a socialist state fails, the argument is inevitably made that this was because they either weren't really socialist or fell due to factors outside of their socialism. And while no nation in the real world can perfectly match a theoretical ideal, Venezuela is about as close to socialism as a country can get. In fact, Venezuela's government either meets or comes very close to meeting each of the 10 tenets of a socialist government that Marx lays out himself in the Communist Manifesto. So, if Venezuela is clearly a socialist state, how can Marxist practices not be in any part to blame for its collapse? One of the main arguments cited by apologists is that Venezuela isn't collapsing due to socialism, rather its dependence on oil in lieu of serious losses in the average cost per barrel. It's true that the cost of oil has dropped immensely, but how much of the failure of the state of Venezuela can be attributed to this? Well, not only is Venezuela not the largest exporter of oil, it isn't even the most oil-dependent nation. It ranks in 8th place for that. Yet, according to the IMF, of the 15 largest oil-exporting countries, Venezuela's economy has tanked more dramatically and persistently than any other. In fact, it's the only country in the group which was in recession through 2014, 2015, and 2016. For years, Venezuela's economy seemed to be doing okay. But this was illusory. See, when an economy grows, that can be because they're making more good stuff, or it can be because the stuff they already have is increasing in value. The latter was the case in Venezuela. Under socialism, there wasn't as much incentive for individuals to invest in harvesting more oil or for workers to be more productive. This was seen in other areas of the economy as well. Steel production, for example, fell by more than 70% after it was nationalized in 2008. So their oil supply stayed at about the same level, even shrinking a bit. And this was masked by the fact that the price of oil was increasing. But unfortunately, prices didn't increase forever. Thing is, even when oil prices were at an all-time high, the Venezuelan government lacked funds. But like a good socialist state, they refused to stop spending. So they monetized their debts, flooding the economy with extra cash and creating a crisis of hyperinflation. As a result, people are now starving in the streets, struggling to have their most basic needs met and suffering in other ways most of us living in developed and free nations may never understand. These kinds of mishaps are the inevitable result of central planning. A market economy isn't perfect, but it allows for people who are good with specific resources to accumulate and manage large supplies of them, whether it be oil, steel, food, or any other important resource. Under socialism, management of precious resources is left up to whomever happens to be empowered by a whimsical and politically operating state to oversee production, and mismanagement almost always ensues. The resulting chaos eliminates countless human lives and creates more unnecessary human suffering than can be quantified. When bearing witness to this kind of injustice, don't allow proponents of the theories which led to it to fall back on the cop-out that it wasn't real socialism. This is cold comfort to the millions who were promised a Marxist utopia just a few years ago and are now eating family pets just to stay alive. And it'll be cold comfort to you if you let them destroy your country.
Pretty strong stuff for animation. He brought up the 10 tenets of socialism that Marx described in the Communist Manifesto and said that Venezuela matched or came close to them. What are those? Well, there's a central banking system. Gee, we have one of those, don't we? Government-controlled education. Wow. We come real close to that, don't we? Government-controlled labor. We're not there yet. But the Green New Deal would get you there, and Venezuela already is. Government ownership of transportation and communication vehicles. Remember, they want to get rid of cars. They want to get rid of airplanes in the Green New Deal. And guess what? The only way you'd be allowed to travel is by means of conveyance that of which the government approves. And I guarantee you that a government approves only of that which it owns. Government ownership of agricultural means and factories. Thank goodness we're not there yet, but they are there in Venezuela. Remember, they nationalized their oil industry. They took it over. There is a Venezuelan oil company. It's not different oil companies, the Shell and ExxonMobil. No, there's just Venezuela. I remember a very famous economist, Milton Friedman, said once, if you put the government in charge of sand in the Sahara Desert, if you put them in charge of the Sahara Desert, in 5 years there'd be a shortage of sand. Venezuela has messed up the largest proven oil reserves outside of Saudi Arabia. How come Saudi Arabia isn't in economic freefall? Oil prices go down for them just like they go down for everybody else. How come they're not in economic freefall? Total abolition of private property. Thank goodness we're not close to that here, but they are in Venezuela. Heavy income tax on everyone. Fortunately, we just reduced income taxation, but that's not what's happening in Venezuela. Elimination of rights of inheritance. Let's call that the death tax, which we still have in this country. And regional planning. Those are the tenets of communism. Socialism or communism doesn't really make a difference because the end goal of socialism is to implement communism. That's what took down Venezuela. And it'll take down any other country. It took down the Soviet Union. That's why the Soviet Union no longer exists. It would have destroyed Cuba by now had the U.S. simply continued its course. Cuba's a mess. Anybody who tells you anything different is simply lying to you. And what is really going on with the Venezuelan economy? When you implement socialism, you wreck economies. Euronews did a piece back in 2017 on inflation and the Venezuelan economy.
The drama of Venezuela's political conflict is being carried out against the backdrop of its worst economic crisis in decades, with runaway inflation far outstripping the average wage. Around 82% of Venezuelan households are living in poverty. Supermarket shelves are empty, making the daily priority the search for just the basics. News of a delivery triggers massive queues.
Aquí no hay medicina,
There are
aquí
no
no hay
medicines,
comida, aquí
there's
no hay
nothing.
nada. Quiero decirle al
I want to tell President Maduro to stop the lies, because if he wants, we can take him into our homes and show him what's in our refrigerators. Euronews' correspondent says citizens form long queues every day to obtain products such as milk, pasta or rice. The Constituent Assembly President, Delcy Rodriguez, has said its members will face the economic crisis that, in her judgment, is being promoted from abroad. Around half of Venezuelan workers are engaged in the so-called informal economy to survive, but that doesn't qualify them for social security. About 40% of the population is eating less than 3 times a day. It could be 1 or 2 times a day. Many Venezuelans have been forced to eat food scavenged from waste bins. Often it's the only food they have each day. This is not just happening at the back of restaurants and cafes, but on middle-class housing estates. While the opposition is blaming President Maduro for the mismanagement of the economy, he still has a strong core of support who see the crisis in terms of a class war. Rich people do not like poor people, and they will never fight for our needs and priorities. Our correspondent adds, specialists in economic issues say that the government will have an uphill battle because for this year inflation is running at around 1,100%.
1,100% inflation. Let me tell you what that means. That means it takes $11 this year to buy what $1 bought last year. That's 1,100% inflation. That was what was going on in 2017. In 2017, 82% of Venezuelan households were in poverty. You got to remember, back in 1999, Venezuela, before they elected Hugo Chavez, was one of the richest countries in this hemisphere, if not the world. Now, less than 20 years later, my goodness. CNN, of all people, did a report in July of last year that talked more about the Venezuelan economy and inflation.
Venezuela already has the world's highest inflation, and it looks like the economic crisis there is about to get even worse. The International Monetary Fund projects the country's inflation rate will rise to an incomprehensible 1,000,000% by the end of the year. Venezuela's GDP is also projected to fall by 18%, making it Venezuela's 3rd straight year of a double-digit decline. Many ordinary Venezuelans are barely getting by. The cost of food and medicine has risen so dramatically, many are forced to choose between them. The economic collapse has hit retirees like Freddie Martinez especially hard.
For us now, the little we have is half to buy food and half to buy medicine. That's my situation right now. Buying from street vendors who are the ones who sell the cheapest, because if you go to a supermarket, you have to pay taxes, and food is much more expensive.
Amid the crisis, Venezuelans are getting creative to try and survive day to day. Some fishermen have turned to bartering fish for flour, rice, and cooking oil.
Because food supplies don't arrive, we have to exchange the fish with people who come here. Tourists even come who bring food to exchange for fish because we don't have the cash.
Venezuela's auto manufacturing industry has also vanished. 2 engineers found a solution to help people with their cars. They search garbage dumps for broken electronic hardware, melt down the plastic waste, and feed it through a 3D printer to create auto parts. Economists say that the central bank hasn't been able to even print currency fast enough to keep up with inflation, and Venezuela's government can't afford the paper for the bills. The economic collapse is so severe, many Venezuelans are seeking a better future elsewhere. An estimated 2 million are expected to leave the country this year, according to published reports. That would mean nearly 4 million people have already left since 2016.
And that brain drain has also been devastating to the country. I want to point out that to deal with the inflation, Venezuela now plans to print new money with 5 fewer zeros. That's it. Just lop off the zeros. Doesn't solve anything for the people that are there on the ground. The bill, of course, will be in circulation next month. But I want to point out that, in fact, Venezuelans don't really even use the money anymore. They have been making arts and crafts with the money that they find, believe it or not. A lot is done electronically or, as you saw in that report, hand-to-mouth. Hand-to-mouth existence for a country that has some of the largest proven reserves of oil in the world.
Money is used as arts and crafts material. You heard 1,000,000% inflation? What does that mean? That means what you could buy with $1 last year will cost you $10,000 this year. That's what it means. This is Germany after World War I, when they were paying reparations. This is that level of inflation. This is ridiculous. And this is socialism. Now, when you have an economy that is that bad, it wreaks havoc on people to the point where you need to get away from it, even though while that's going on, you still have people in Venezuela who support the socialist government, which is amazing. You know, because misery loves company. But that's another discussion. President Trump last week spoke in West Palm Beach regarding Venezuela and his efforts to try, or to get the international community to try to help the Venezuelan people.
President Trump just wrapped up a speech in Miami. He spoke at Florida International University about the current political and humanitarian crisis in Venezuela. News Channel 5's Matt Cesney is live with what the president's message was to the group gathered today. Matt?
Well, Kelly, I can tell you it was a pretty strong message from President Trump. Of course, he did start this day in West Palm Beach with golf and then came down here this afternoon to Miami to the campus of Florida International University, where he declared Venezuela to be a Cuban puppet. Now, there also were demonstrators outside here on campus, outside the basketball arena, who did not get inside to hear the president. But during the speech, the president did call upon Venezuelan troops to now allow humanitarian aid from the United States into the country from Colombia, over the Colombia border. The president also said socialist rule has ruined the country of Venezuela, and he also called upon socialist ruler Nicolas Maduro to step down.
We seek a peaceful transition of power, but all options are open.
The president also did not like the fact that there are about some 20,000 Cuban troops now in Venezuela supporting Maduro. The president also drew wide applause when he said socialism is now in its twilight hour, and he called for an end to socialist rule not only in Venezuela, but also in Cuba and Nicaragua. Live on the campus of Florida International University in Miami, Matt Cesney, WPTV News Channel 5.
Socialism is in its twilight hour in countries where it is destroying the people and the economies. But of course, you have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders wanting to bring socialism to America because it works so well everywhere else. It's never worked anywhere, by the way. And apparently, the troops from Cuba that are now in Venezuela are helping the Venezuelan military do something that I think is unconscionable.
A showdown in Venezuela between protesters and troops became a deadly flashpoint Saturday. Security forces loyal to Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro unleashed tear gas and rubber bullets on protesters, killing at least 2 of them. The protests were trying to break through the soldiers' blockade of U.S. foreign aid. Some of the trucks carrying food and medicine for Venezuela were set on fire. Dozens of people were injured by rubber rounds fired by soldiers. Earlier in the day, interim President Juan Guaido had given a personal send-off to the aid caravan leaving the Colombian city of Cúcuta.
February 23rd will be 1 month since I assumed the presidency, and the Venezuelan people will be out on the street demanding the arrival of humanitarian aid.
Maduro is blocking aid entering the country and denies there's a crisis. He closed down the border with Colombia and Brazil and sent troops to guard all crossings, angering residents and sparking clashes. But in a sign of dissent on Saturday, some soldiers refused to follow Maduro's orders and defected.
I recognize our president, Juan Guaido, and I'm in this struggle with the people of Venezuela in every protest with the hearts of our people.
Maduro is also angry with Colombia's support for Guaido. He says he's cutting ties with his neighbor and gave Colombia's ambassador and consular staff 24 hours to leave Venezuela. Leaders of Venezuela's ruling Socialist Party called Guaido's aid effort a veiled invasion backed by Washington and insist that the U.S. should instead help Venezuela by lifting crippling financial and oil sector sanctions. After Saturday's violence, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence's aides say he plans to meet with Guaido for the first time on Monday in Colombia. Officials said Friday if the aid convoy was turned away, Pence was ready to ratchet up tough U.S. sanctions even further to try and cut off Maduro's funding.
So troops in Venezuela, aided by troops from Cuba, would not allow humanitarian aid into the country and even burned the trucks that brought them and shot and killed the Venezuelan people. At least 2 dead. Dozens injured. That's socialism. That's what happens when people get enough of socialism and finally decide that they need to change, but governments do not go quietly into that good night once they've assumed a socialist or communist level of power. That is why you need to look at those who proposed the Green New Deal and tell them very kindly, very politely, and the horse you rode in on. They're out to destroy you. And they don't care how they do it. They just care that they have the opportunity to control your lives to the point that you live it on their terms. And if you're not happy with it, their response, while they use your money to do this to you, their response to you is, too bad. Think of all the good for everyone else. And that's our show. God bless you. God keep you. You need to understand there is nothing good in socialism, whether it's the New Deal, which failed, the Green New Deal, which cannot succeed, or all the examples of socialism, whether Cuba, whether the Soviet Union, Venezuela. It never works. It never can, because it denies human nature and the aspirations of the human spirit. Stand up against it. Stand up for yourselves, your family, your country. And I'll say it, make America great again. Until next week, do take care.
You've been listening to Black Man Thinkin' with your host, Stan Levy. Join Stan midnight to 2 a.m. That's late Monday night into early Tuesday morning. And find him on the web at Black Man Thinkin' without the G. That's blackmanthinkin.com.